Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Shall we start? Okay. So I heard you had a problem with food. I suppose illness or some problem today? What was the reason of you being late? Oh, they changed your mess. So you didn't have a problem with food. Food itself is a problem? No. Okay. So all of you had your breakfast?
Yes.
It was good. What did you have after breakfast? Water. Very good. You didn't have water after that? Coffee. Okay. Coffee. It's a modified form of water. Okay. So you are having. I saw somebody drinking water from the next room, opposite room, and coming out. How do you know that your drinking water is good? See, food you can taste, and if it's not good, if it's stale, you can make it out. I mean, what is the one thing which you can realize if whether water is good or not? Is there any visible indicator? Am I having all your attention here, or you're still busy with something else? Then I'll wait and start after another 5 minutes. This is not a classroom session. It's good. You can have a small roundtable conference between yourselves also. That is one good thing. But there are also certain disadvantages. It's at the same level, so I can't see the back of rows. Anyway, so is there any visible indicator that the water which you drank or whatever drinking water you collected is good for you? Looks clear. Okay, so looks clear, that is the first thing which comes into mind. If it's colored, Coke is colored, but all of us drink that, no? Okay, so we are going to discuss today the tertiary treatment of water. Water treatment as such involves lot of steps, but the tertiary one is the last and the most important one. So we'll be discussing that. Before that, we'll just have a small intro on why we need tertiary water treatment or why we need water treatment at all. All of us are aware that you cannot drink dirty water, so obviously you need to drink it, treat it using various methods. But why should you care? Somebody is cleaning water and giving you in packaged bottles. You can drink this Bisleri or RO water at home. Why do you care? You will once you know that there will be a water shortage after a few years, and is going to be. I think you are already aware of many metro cities where you have potable drinking water shortage, isn't it? Chennai also a few years back we had the same problem. So you will have to take care, because we have already created problems for you, and you are the fix-it generation. Okay, we have created enough problems, and you will have to solve that for you to survive, unfortunately or fortunately. So let's see how many of us are aware of tertiary water treatment. Any of this, you can choose any of those. So that's why it's MCQ, no? Multiple choice is also allowed. C? You can do it. All the four options are for you. Which one do you think is the most important one? Okay, let me tell you, there is only one correct answer for this. Then?
1B.
Only one is a correct answer. So 1. B. Okay.
Question 2 it is B. Question 2 it is C.
Question 2 it is C.
B. Third one is B.
Filtration can never remove germs. Okay. 3 is B. This is a very easy question. You don't even need to. You can close your eyes and answer that. Hmm? C. What about this one? Very good. So all of you are already a champion. I don't need to take this class. Huh? Okay. What about, so what are we going to look at today? Tertiary water treatment. It's a small intro of why it is and what it is. So the different levels of water treatment involves primary, secondary and then tertiary level. There are various applications where you can straight away use water after secondary treatment. For example, if you wanted to use for your toilets or gardening, you can use them after secondary treatment. But if you want to use it for drinking purpose, it has to be treated at tertiary level. So the primary treatment is like you need to take out the big chunks. You have many suspended particles which can be sedimented and taken out. Those are removed using primary treatment, just like you taking out vegetables, some of you, not all of you, out of your food, but vegetables are good for your health, but not in this case actually. Secondary treatment is more of related to the bioorganisms which are there, which can take part of the treatment process. And after that also you have certain pollutants which is difficult to get rid of, and that is where tertiary treatment of water comes into. Okay? So tertiary treatment is something like a spa for water where you have, you treat it, you make it beautiful and it's flawless. Scientific terms, what are the different steps? Primary treatment is mostly to take care of the solid particles. So you have the first phase of sewage treatment where it's placed in a holding tank and it's made to rest. The bigger chunks of particles or sands, they settle down and you remove the top layer. That is then sent to secondary treatment where, as I said, bioorganisms take part, and they are the ones which, where waste, mostly organic waste, is broken down by aerobic bacteria, that is in presence of oxygen. So you need to have an aerated supply of water. And even then you have some persistent pollutants which are difficult to remove using primary and secondary treatment. So you go for tertiary treatment of water. And this is mostly designed to filter for nutrients and waste particles. And even after tertiary treatment, there is something called secondary tertiary treatment, where you have pollutants like PFAs and pharmaceutical products, dissolved products, which are difficult to remove even with the primary tertiary treatment. So there is something called advanced oxidation process, which is incorporated to remove such type of pollutants, because this is something which you don't want in your drinking water. And as we progress, as more and more pharmaceutical industries are coming into picture, or you have the beauty products, all these type of persistent pollutants which can exist in water even after secondary treatment are increasing. So why do we, what is the problem? How big is the problem? Why exactly do we need to take care of this? See, mostly wastewater consists of all these. First, you have bacteria, viruses, all the microorganisms. You have organic particles, which are bigger chunks. You also have soluble organic particles, which includes pharmaceuticals. The bigger ones can be removed at secondary stage when the bioorganisms react with them. But the dissolved ones like pharmaceuticals or other polymers are difficult to remove. And then these are the ones which are removed using the sand, grit and all are bigger ones, which you remove in the first stage itself. So the points which you need to know is that after you remove, how will you know that the water which you have cleaned is good or potable? You need to talk in terms of BOD, COD and TOC. So what are these? These are actually biological oxygen demand. So you have life in water. I'm sure all of you are aware that they need dissolved oxygen. So if water is really dirty or completely devoid of oxygen, then the biological oxygen demand it becomes very low, and then it's very difficult for any life to exist in water. So when the water is clean, it's treated at tertiary level, the BOD levels increase. COD is again chemical oxygen demand. It's actually the amount of oxygen which is required to oxidize the pollutants. And there is something called TOC, which is total organic content. So if you're destroying or removing the organic content, obviously TOC should increase or decrease. TOC should increase. Now both of you tell me who is correct. He said decrease, he's saying increase. You know why you are saying increase? Did you sleep at night? That is the reason. Okay. So there are other organic pollutants, heavy metals, which are also, so we will be discussing some AOPs, which can even remove heavy metal ions from water. So those all fall under tertiary water treatment. So just as we started, we discussed that clear water. Some of you said that clear water, it was clear so you could drink and you know that it's drinking water. And some of you also said that clear water is not always clean. So there is a myth that clear water is clean water. So even in potable drinking water, you can have dissolved contaminants which are not good for your health, but we don't know. We just believe the tag which is here, Bisleri, Kinley. So even recently, many of the countries have had antibiotics in tap water, PFS in tap water, especially Australia has come out openly and they have accepted that it's there. In our country or in many other countries, we don't even know if it's there or not. Okay. So why do we end up with these type of pollutants? And these are alarming because there is actually no treatment available in the current water treatment mechanisms available with our cities or metro cities where you can get rid of these pollutants. When you have fever, you take an antibiotic for 5 days or 3 days. But the actual amount of antibiotic which works for your body is only 10%. 90% is something which is excreted. Other than that, you have pharmaceutical, all the expired antibiotics, tablets, which come out of these pharmaceutical industries. And all the water bodies, for example, in Hyderabad, you have a pharmaceutical industry. If they check the water bodies all around it, they are filled with pharmaceutical byproducts in water, and all of these are dissolved products. Other than this, you have other sources. What are those? You have obviously urban wastewater, which includes from households and hospitals, drug manufacturing companies, and also from poultry farms. Because we know most of these poultry farms use antibiotics and they have been using it for decades. So what happens is our body, once these antibiotics come into water, they are dissolved, and if you don't get rid of them, maybe after a few years, instead of the tablets, the doctor will prescribe tap water itself. But that is not correct. Even if they prescribe tap water, something is not correct there. Why? Because if you keep on drinking the same water with all these pharmaceutical byproducts, there is the body or the microorganisms in that water become resistant to those antibiotics. See, if you have paracetamol or any other, let's say ciprofloxacin is one very commonly used antibiotic in water, and I said that 90% of it is coming out. So you have already antibiotics in water, and the microorganisms or viruses, bacteria, all these are exposed to these antibiotics. So over a period of time, they become resistant to it. So when you actually want to treat these organisms, okay, in your body, yes?
Why is it that these antibiotics are actually harmful now? Because we are ingesting
Hmm? Yes, that is what I'm saying. Becoming resistant means, see, when your mother keeps scolding you one day, once in a blue moon, it will affect you. If it's a daily routine, my son doesn't listen to me because he has become resistant to it. It's the same thing. No, it building up resistance means the microorganism will start to create layers, protective layers. What does resistant mean? I mean, in terms of microorganism, it will now create a mechanism on its own to stop that antibiotic from attacking it. So it will actually be creating few layers of, for example, we know they have cell wall. Okay, cell wall is in all mechanisms. They may create over a period of time a resistant mechanism which will no longer be effective even if you keep on adding antibiotics. So if you are exposed to one particular antibiotic, you remember your doctor says that you need to complete the course. Why is it so? Because if he's saying you to take a tablet or an antibiotic for 5 days, and if you take it for 3 days, stop, your body actually becomes resistant to it. Next time that antibiotic is not going to act on the disease which it is meant for. Yes. See, it's not becoming used to. It is, you are treating the.
Why doesn't the resistance develop in the 5 years old?
That is why you have a certain dosage of a material and you have a certain body type. Seeing that only, the doctor prescribes you the medicine and also the disease which you have. Okay. So if you are not taking it for 3 days, next time the same antibiotic will not work on you, your body. See this, yes.
Does your body become resistant to it?
Yes.
Bacteria.
Body becoming resistant is you have bacteria inside. No, why do you get a disease? Because you have some microorganism inside you, and when you are giving an antibiotic, the antibiotic wants to kill that.
No, the strain of bacteria becomes.
Yes. See, you have E. coli. Let's say you have E. coli or Vibrio fischeri. These are bacteria strains which become resistant to it. So in water here we don't have any human body in this case. These are all existing in water. Now, if water has all these different source of antibiotics or tablets or some of these pharmaceutical products which are in water, these microorganisms, just like it becomes resistant in our body when you keep on feeding them, unequal doses or of medicine, they become resistant inside water with a period of time. So what happens is, once they are resistant, when you are drinking the same water, you are drinking this water with the microorganism and with that pharmaceutical product inside. So your body in turn becomes resistant. Now when you take that ciprofloxacin again, that is not going to act on the bacteria which is inside. You are drinking a contaminated water with E. coli which has already become resistant to some antibiotic here. Now if you take the same antibiotic, will it act on that? So it's the same thing. That is what is called antimicrobial resistance. Or, yes.
So now you're saying that when we drink contaminated water, basically we develop resistance, immunity. Does that just mean we can find the correct medicine?
How long are you going to make medicines? So as of now, you have a list of, I'll show you the list of antibiotics which we have. These are the very commonly used antibiotics. And all of till now, whatever has been made, these are the best ones. And many of us, if we are aware of urinary tract infection, which is a very common infection in women, every 1 in 3 women will suffer through UTI. And they normally, doctor prescribes a lot of antibiotics, and over the period of time, after some time, their body becomes resistant to that. And when it becomes resistant, the last antibiotic which can be used, which is called colistin, and that's also called the last hope. because it's a hope drug that if nothing works, that is going to work, and that also has to be given intravenous, not as tablets. Even the poultry farms use these antibiotics, and as some of them are also known to use colistins. So when your body keeps on becoming resistant to whatever these pharmaceutical industries are making, they are not a machine, no? You have to have a lot of research before they release any drug into market. So over a period of time, water being contaminated with these antibiotics is fed into our body, and so the body or the strain becomes resistant. So when I develop a disease again, that strain is not going to be affected with the antibiotic which the doctor gives me. So it's a very alarming issue, and it's one of the top 10 issues which the WHO has recommended to be taken care of. Now, why am I stressing on this one? Because tertiary water treatment can take care of this problem. The thing is, these are dissolved drugs. So any undissolved matter, it's very easy to remove. You can use filtration, and there are various other techniques. But dissolved drugs, you can only use potential catalysts to break them down into non-toxic products or lower molecular weight materials, which are no longer into some form which will make the bioorganism resistant. Okay. Along with this, you also need to take care of the strain or the genes which have already been mutated or they have become resistant to it. So for this, these are some of the journals and newspaper reports which have, so if you actually look into the water sources, this is about India, right from Ganga in the north to Hyderabad in the south, all the water sources, ground sources, lake water, surrounding water bodies have been contaminated, and these results actually show that these are the antibiotics and these are the strains, these are the water sources in which they have been found, and the concentration is up to this, and some of this actually show the resistance to, I think one of the table here, I'm not sure. Yeah, so these are the antibiotics here again, present in these many percentages, and I don't have the table now, that one which shows the resistance of this bacteria, of different types of bacteria to all these antibiotics which have been there in these water tables. So yes, it's an alarming issue because you have, if you read newspaper, you will see recently there are many reports on antibiotic resistance, as well as PFS, which I'm not going to discuss here. Okay, so this is something which I've already told you. How do we know that it has been taken care of? These are the 3 parameters which we normally test, other than the disinfection studies which we do after the treatment to find out that it is treated. So how is that done? Let's start with again the primary treatment. You know, there are filtration, membrane filtration, activated carbon. Some of you would know because these are the even there are DIY kits which are available. You know, you can make these layers of filtered membranes or water treatments, which will clean water at primary level only. Okay, so again, reverse osmosis, the second step, you can detox the water from certain chemicals like nitrates, phosphates, and using the reverse osmosis or from higher contaminated water to a lower contaminated water. So these are only available for primary and secondary treatment. Again, there's a step called disinfection. I'm sure all of us are aware of chlorination of water. So that mostly takes care of disinfection. So if you have germs in water, they are exposed to UV rays, and you can disinfect the water. Okay. So these 3 techniques, primary treatment, secondary treatment, as well as the tertiary water treatment, are based on many different types of operations, physical, chemical, as well as biological. So any of these processes can either depend only on a physical process. Physical process includes screening, sedimentation, flotation, taking care of the larger chunks. Then you have chemical units, which involve the chemical reactions. When they take care of the water treatment process, they involve the chemical reactions. So all these dechlorination, adsorption, precipitation involve the chemical unit operations. Okay. Biological units, even though they are actually good when you use them, because for nature they don't require chemicals. You don't need any type of energy, outside energy. But the problem with biological unit operations is it's a bit slow. So when you have such a big population to take care of, and the water volume is so large, it becomes difficult to deal only with biological unit operations. But we do use biological unit operations when you keep it with certain physical and chemical units. So along with them you can use it, but not as a separate entity. So in cases where you cannot get rid of some contaminants using the other techniques. So in a primary wastewater treatment, first part is screening to remove the large debris, and then removal of sand, gravels, and then sedimentation. Post that, it is sent to sludge treatment. Okay, so sludge treatment is something which is taken care of in secondary wastewater treatment, where you have microorganisms. So they feed on these sludge, break them down, okay, and then in that process they treat the effluent. But still you will be, there will be some sludge remaining, so that is again sent back to the primary one and aerated. You need aeration because these microorganisms are doing aerobic treatment. You need oxygen supply, regular oxygen supply. So continuous aeration is needed for sludge treatment in secondary wastewater treatment technique. This is a schematic which represents what happens in a secondary treatment. So since you are doing a biological nutrient removal, there is a continuous aeration tank, okay? And you have microorganisms here which are feeding on the sludge. That is again transferred to this. Organisms settle down, and the water which is clean from the secondary treatment is sent back for disinfection. Okay? And if you have further sludge remaining, it is again sent back and aerated, and further treatments follow till the maximum output can be extracted. So tertiary treatment as such involves all these different types of techniques. Traditionally, we have had ion exchange, absorption, disinfection, UV irradiation, which is again a tertiary water treatment technique. But most of these operations involve high operational costs, chemical usage, excessive chemical usage. And they are not fully effective because they cannot get rid of all these pollutants which we have been discussing till now. Okay. So these are some of the tertiary water treatment techniques which are being used now. You are already aware of reverse osmosis, RO, this one, but this is again very, from the viewpoint of chemical usage, it's good. It's an energy efficient design, but a lot of what have you noticed? How many of you have RO at home? Have you noticed anything? Can you see that from outside?
There are two separate tanks for water.
Okay. Then, have you noticed something which is not sustainable? Yeah, maybe we can tell that. But this thing will, yes, that is what I was referring to. So it produces almost 60% of the water goes waste. You know, what you end up with is only a 40% of water. That is the first thing you should notice. Continuous water flow. If you are using it for certain purpose, that's different thing. I use it for gardening, but I don't think many of us do. So 60% of water goes waste, and that is one of the reasons it's going to be banned in near future. Okay. So reverse osmosis, even though it's effective in few cases, but not sustainable in that way. Similarly, biological tertiary treatment, as I said, you can use them, but they are very slow process, so you cannot clean a lot of volume using biological treatment. Electrochemical and adsorption techniques involve chemical processes. So those are some of the disadvantages, but they can also they are energy efficient because you are not using an external bias or electrical supply most of the cases. And then you can also use waste derived adsorbents, because activated carbon is something which you can generate using lot of sources, which are waste products. Yes.
Talk about how lots of water gets wasted in the outdoors.
Hmm.
But in the end, doesn't it go down the drain into the ground, like just
This is about the water. We are talking about water treatment efficiency. What does efficiency say? That if you are taking something, I mean a tank of water, you should be able to treat the whole thing.
But it's not really waste and waste, it's going back to the ground.
Does it actually go to ground water? Many a times it is just thrown away. See, most of the land in Chennai is solid. Even rainwater is not going inside. So that's the problem. I mean, we are not replenishing as we take out.
Now, why does water treatment itself have to be efficient?
What?
Why does water treatment itself have to be efficient?
Everything needs to be efficient, not just water. Even you have to be efficient. I need to be efficient. We always crave for efficiency in anything, isn't it? And that should also be sustainable along with being efficient. Efficiency is also a measurement for sustainability. We are going to discuss sustainability in the next discussion. Yes.
Again, like not just
Pardon?
if we can treat it like multiple times, then that means that
So that will not be efficient, no? So why do you have to do it multiple times when a single process can do it? Okay. You want to treat water. If you can do something else simultaneously, that is welcome. Or at least you should be able to treat the entire water which you are taking at a time instead of wasting it. Okay. Multiple times you are again taking to another system. When you go to a company, they will not ask you a system where you need 10 steps. They will be looking for something where you can clean it in 2 steps. So AOPs are out of all these tertiary techniques which we have mentioned. This is something where you can minimize the chemical usage. Ozone treatment is something which is already known, but not again. The disadvantage is this: even ozone treatment cannot get rid of the pollutants which we had just discussed. UV photolysis, again, you need UV lamps, which is not very viable option, and it's an expensive source of energy which you are using. So everywhere you cannot be carrying UV lamps. If you want a portable system, you cannot be carrying a UV lamp for treating such tertiary level waters. There is something, what we are going to focus today is on Fenton process. We don't have much time because we started late, but in another 10 minutes we'll try to see what exactly is a Fenton process. So this process, we want to focus on this because it takes care of many sustainability aspects. And how? Because this is something where you have, you can use compounds with iron, or you can also use what are called zero valent ions. So compounds with iron, what happens is you have, when you take these at catalyst in presence of hydrogen peroxide H2O2, they generate what is called a hydroxyl radical. So there's something called hydroxyl ion and a hydroxyl radical. What is the difference between these two? Any idea? I don't expect you to answer, but still, if you... So you are giving me a definition of an ion and a radical. Okay, so but if for a hydroxyl ion and a hydroxyl radical,
like one has even number of electrons, the other has all number of electrons.
hydroxyl radical has an unpaired electron. It's neutral, but it has an unpaired electron. Hydroxyl radical. Hydroxyl ion is charged. Out of these two, hydroxyl radical is the most effective and reactive because it has an unpaired electron. So when you have this reaction, Fenton process, we are not going into detail of the process, but Fenton processes are processes where you use iron-based materials or even iron, zero valent iron, that is Fe0, metallic iron nanoparticles. to generate what are called hydroxyl radicals, and these hydroxyl radicals are actually highly efficient because these are the reactions which are involved in that. Hydroxyl radicals actually are said to be detergent of water because they have a non-selective role to play. They can actually oxidize any pollutant on earth, which is nano zero valent iron. Okay, here in this case we also see copper here, so it's a bimetallic nanoparticle. This is done to avoid some passivation layers because iron, gets oxidized very easily. So to take care of the aging process means it should work. You should be able to reuse that material again and again. So to do that, we make a bimetallic material with that. And another thing which you need to test is, if you are using powder to clear water, you cannot be having a secondary pollution again. That is this powder should not be left behind. So this is which we discussed was a photophenton process. There is a similar AOP which is called photocatalysis. The word itself says catalysis in presence of photon or light. So when you have a material, we are aware, if you have read semiconductor already or you are aware, in a material you will have conduction band, valence band. They are not actually lines, but for simplicity and to make our life easier, it's represented like this. You have a conduction band where the electrons move, and you have valence band where the carriers are mostly holes. So when the energy or the photon is incident, the light is absorbed and electron hole pairs are generated. You actually break the bond, electron hole pairs are generated. Electron moves towards a conduction band and they combine with oxygen to form what are called superoxide radicals. These are again something like hydroxyl radical which can act on the pollutant. Okay, and here again you have hole which is reacting with water to provide hydroxyl radicals. So all these radicals can oxidize the organic pollutants and break them down to non-toxic products. Okay, the end products in most of these cases are water or CO2. Based on this, you can design some cells. Photocatalytic fuel cells are one of those very simple techniques where you don't need any external bias or power to run these cells. The fuel in this case is your contaminated water. Okay, you have electrolyte. Whenever you have a cell like that where you have a cathode and an anode, so this is your polluted water. You have a photocathode and a photoanode, and it's connected to, it's just connected through a metallic contact. Photoanode is the material which we were discussing, something like a material which will get activated in presence of light. By activation means electron hole pairs will be generated. Dark cathode is something which is like platinum, which will not absorb, will not give rise to any electron hole pair generation. That's why it's a dark cathode. It's a metal. Okay, but photoanodes are mostly semiconductors. Conduction band, valence band. For metals, there is no forbidden band gap. So again, here when light is incident, electron hole pairs are generated. So basically, when the electron hole pairs are generated, why electron moves from this side to this side? Because these are two different materials and they have different Fermi levels. And when they are in contact with each other, because of the concentration gradient, electron has to move from the anode side to the cathode side. Okay, so this is a basic, very simple representation. It is obviously more complicated than this, but this is how you can at present understand what is a photocatalytic fuel cell. So when electron moves through the external circuit, it will generate power, and along with that, when you have holes here which will be reacting with water to create hydroxyl radicals which will act on your polluted water. So you are cleaning water and you are also generating electricity. So there are different designs. We will skip this part. And these are the components which you have seen. Electrolyte, a small amount of electrolyte is added, mostly KOH or NaOH or sodium sulfide. fuel is the contaminated water. Because, why do we call that as a fuel? Because that is the one which we are breaking down, and the energy, the electrical energy or the power which is generated is from that. So that is the fuel. Our contaminated water is the fuel there. Light sources, you can do it in presence of sunlight. That is the best part. So when you collect sample and you treat it, so these are real Dandri waste waters which have been collected and treated, you will see that their toxicity is much less, and it enables growth of or germination after treatment. Okay, so it has various advantages compared to whatever is at present available, because most of them use external power source, or you require gas input. You also require external pressure in some cases where pressure sand filters are used. Many of these cannot effectively treat antibiotics or get rid of the AMR genes, definitely not. Okay, so this is the advantage of PFC. It is self-powered, you don't need external bias, you can do it in sunlight, so you can make it into a portable source. We'll just skip this. These are some floating films. When you use powders, there is always a chance of secondary pollution. You may leave some powder behind, okay? So, if you can make it into a film form which can float and clean. This again does not require any external power. And under sun, if the catalyst is such that using a polymer you can make a film and it floats, you can clean water with floating films, okay? Okay. So we will have in 2 minutes, I just want any one of you to act like a government regulator or a wastewater treatment engineer and tell me what is your main aim when you consider wastewater treatment. Let's say if you are a government regulator, what do you want?
For everyone to have
cheap water,
Okay.
cheap water processes.
Public health, okay, and clean water, pollution control, it takes care of both. Okay. Cheap is something somebody else wants here. We'll see who is it. Wastewater treatment engineer.
The most efficient, the most cheap.
Technical solution is efficient and innovation. The engineers will not look into cost effectiveness. They don't. They actually take the efficiency or the innovation part. How good they will clean. They'll be able to clean.
the innovation part leads
Leads to us. That is the problem of translational research. That is why many of the companies don't directly go to engineers. See, even when if you take professors here, all of them are engineers. No, they do engineering and they do PhD and come here. But most of them, so the basic sciences one. But then when we make 10 technologies, only one may go to industry, because when we do it with the aim of solving the problem. Okay, solving the problem with a lower expense comes when you want to give it to industry, or when the industry wants to take it. Okay, what about environmental activists? Sustainable and eco-friendly practices. Okay, next.
Their health and the wellness of those also.
Yes, water quality and then impact. Last, I can't say bench here.
The money.
Huh? Okay, industry representative obviously looking for cost and compliance. So, with this we will stop this session. So, you have to venture into all these emerging trends if you are looking for wastewater treatment later. Thank you.
Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.